Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of the City of Hudson for Monday, June 3rd. First order of business is consideration of previous meeting minutes. Everyone had a chance to review. Any changes or additions?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is consider approval of claims. Each of you received this in your packet, plus it was on the internet, so you could take a look at it.
Move for approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Application for operator's license, issue seat, operator's license for approval for June 3rd. You have a list in front of them, and this would be approval and issuance of regular operator's license for the period of 6/4/13 to 6/30/15. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And to approve the issuance of temporary operator's license to be used July 3rd through the 6th, 2013 during the Hudson Booster Days event in Lakefront Park. There's 6 licensed there. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is annual alcoholic beverage license held by Hanson Brothers Golf Holdings, owned by Hanson Brothers LLC. Consider possible suspension or revocation of 2012-2013 alcoholic beverage license or renewal or non-renewal of the 2013-14 annual beverage license. Catherine, do you want to just kind of
Sure.
summarize your memorandum?
Yes. At the last Finance and Council meeting, a question was raised whether the Hudson Golf Course was complying with the continuation of business requirement in the Hudson City Code. And so their renewal application was removed from the group that were approved, and information was gathered regarding whether they were in compliance, when had they been open, so on and so forth. And I had discussions with Mr. Redmond, their attorney. He provided that list of events that they had that I attached to my memo. Basically, under the code requires to avoid cancellation or suspension, revocation, or to avoid violating the continuation of business requirement, you need to be open a period of more than 2 days. Anything less than 2 days is, for a period of 2 days, is not sufficient to avoid cancellation. So the idea is, at the time, the council didn't want someone to be, a licensee to be able to open for 1 day or 2 days and thereby interrupt the 90-day period. So I told you the reasoning behind that. We were up against the quota and so forth. Anyway, to get to this situation, they did submit a list of events. However, as stated in the memo, none of the events, regardless of the type or purpose of the event, none of them were open for more than 2 days. So that under the code, they weren't open sufficiently long to interrupt the 90-day continuation of business requirement. As I told you, Mr. Redmond believes that period of 2 days or less doesn't require consecutive days. My response was a period of 2 days means 2 consecutive days. So we went back and forth, and that's just his opinion, my opinion. And so I went through and gave you some options. So I think under the plain reading of the ordinance, they didn't comply. He brings up arguments that this is they kind of run 2 businesses, a golf course, and then in the off-season, this banquet event type business. And so it's a little bit different from your standard licensed restaurant or bar. Be that as it may, that's for, you to consider if you choose. Basically, possible actions are, if you decide that they weren't in compliance, you could decide not, you could either revoke or suspend the current license or decide not to renew the upcoming license. It would be for violation of a municipal ordinance, which is what the continuation of business is. At this meeting, you would just be saying, look, we think it looks like you did violate it. There are notice and hearing requirements before you can take any of those actions. And they require, a trial-type quasi-judicial hearing where both sides present evidence on whether there was compliance or not. Some of you have been through one of those before with another licensee for different reasons, but it's a fairly involved process. So that's one possibility. Alternatively, the city could decide, or the council could decide, look, there was confusion about how the ordinance operated, and so on and so forth. We're going to renew the license, but we're going to tell them this is how it operates and warn them that the city expects compliance with the ordinance. And it might give some examples of how the licensee can demonstrate compliance with the ordinance, and basically being open periods of 3 days or more during, consistently. So that's another option. A third option that I did inform you of is the licensee did bring up this issue of, look, we're a special event banquet type business, different from the other standard licensed businesses. It's a benefit to the community to have this type of facility available. You may want to consider whether you want to do anything to change the continuation of business requirement to accommodate a business that's different from most licensed businesses. So that's kind of the nutshell. I think the reasoning behind the whole requirement was that the city wanted to really grant licenses to businesses who are going to actively and fully make use of those licenses, at least actively. And rather than hold, there had been situations where a property owner would hold the license and make very little use of it. And the city felt that was just not in the best interest of the city. So,
Okay.
Questions?
Well, so when we talk about making use of the license, they did make note of the fact that they had a licensed server on staff pretty much every day. Whether or not someone came in is a different question, correct?
Yeah, it's, open for business for purposes of the license. And, if someone's there, but there's no advertising that, we're open for business, please come in and, have a happy hour or whatever. I guess it's really a facts and circumstances type question. The council can review the situation and determine whether they are actually open for business for the license purposes. They do say that the city's compliance officer said if your front door is open, you better have a licensed operator on the premises. That was not with respect to any continuation of business requirement, I think. And I did speak with Mr. Krupich, and he said, well, if they're open to serve alcohol, they have to have a licensed operator. If the bar is locked up, it's not his opinion that they need to have a licensed operator. They certainly can't serve without a licensed operator on the premises. But whether it's open for business for the purpose of the continuation of business requirement, that's a broader question. Are they trying to make use of their license? If they simply are on the premises and happen to have a licensed operator, I think you can legitimately question, but don't advertise or have any expectation that someone's going to come in and request a drink or food or what have you, then you can question whether they're really open for business for the license purpose, in my view.
Kathy, did we ever get receipts on alcohol served, like at the Rotary meetings? Did we ever
No.
We request that?
I said that's one way they can show that, hey, they were, ready and available and actually did serve liquor.
Okay.
Here's the issue for me. I guess the city has a code, and we expect the people who obtain liquor licenses to abide by the code that was established by the city. And if the city doesn't enforce that code, we lose the right to enforce it. And that's the real big issue for me. And I don't want the city to lose the right to enforce the code because it's in there for a specific reason, which Kathy mentioned. And so that's the reason I'm concerned about this, is that we don't lose that right. Am I here to try to put some punitive damages to the Hudson Golf Club? Absolutely not. Am I here to try to get them into compliance? Absolutely. And I think if we can get them into compliance, we save our right to enforce the code. So I'm satisfied that we are enforcing the code, and I would also be satisfied if we can get them to be in compliance. I think that would remedy the situation for me.
My question to you, Rich, is excuse me, is that are you trying to dictate their business plan on what do you mean bring them into compliance?
Andy, all I'm saying is that they have to have some type of a plan that says they can somehow operate for 3 days in some 90-day period of time, 2 times a year, because the period of time that they suffer is the November through April time frame. And actually, if the weather's good, it's November through March. So there's 2 90-day periods where they would have to have some segment of their business operate for 3 days. That could be a Valentine's Day weekend. It could be St. Patrick's Day weekend. It could be for 3 days they have
So
some
you're
type
not
of
asking above and beyond, is what I guess.
No, I'm absolutely not
questioning.
asking above and beyond. All I'm saying is I would just like to know that there's some way that they can get into compliance so that this satisfies the city code. And we retain our right to enforce the code. They come into compliance, and this solves it. That's where I'm at with it.
And I guess my question would just be, are they not doing that now? By being open, we're not requiring them to take in a certain amount in receipts or to serve a certain amount of alcohol. We're saying they need to be open, which they, whether or not
Well,
they advertise, I don't think that's our business, honestly.
Well, are they
Open to serve
seeking to
alcohol.
exercise the privileges of the license? That's really the question, I think.
They're
are they
open
open?
and they have a licensed server.
Well,
If you
open, just so you understand, and it's a judgment call for the council to make, not for me. Open is their front door is not locked.
Okay.
But I don't, at least when I reviewed it and through my discussions, I didn't get the sense that they had any expectation that someone would come in and request a drink.
Catherine,
Because nobody knew they were open. That's just the sense I get from the facts and circumstances as they were explained to me.
is there a different class of license at like a prom center under the state of Wisconsin? I'm trying to do comparison to the
Yeah.
prom center. Are they open all the time?
I hope they're not serving alcohol at
No.
proms. I'm just saying.
No,
The prom center.
I know what you mean.
No, but understand, this is a local requirement. It's not a state requirement. This is a city requirement because of the situation the city was in, where there would be several applicants for one license.
Well, is there a different class of license we could put that under?
No, the city cannot
Okay.
create, the only thing is the 6-month, which they've said, the city could change its ordinances. It allows a 6-month beer license. Right now does not allow a 6-month liquor license, but it could. It's authorized under state law, but they've said that really would not help them.
Because they do have events during the off
Correct.
golf season.
And outside of a couple, maybe 1 or 2 facilities, I don't see another facility that gives the option for a wedding reception with alcohol there or holiday parties.
Hudson House.
Well, that's what I said, outside of the one or two options, but
Well, they didn't have a wedding reception last year.
But he's just saying potential
There has been.
location.
Not last year.
well, no, but in general, they have that ability.
The question for us is whether or not we want to change our policy on this. You know, it's really hard to, if you look at November, I've been a member of Rotary for 20 years. I don't think I've ever seen alcohol served there. In fact, I was going to ask on last 2 Wednesdays ago, Jeff, when you were there, and the answer was, we're not open for serve alcohol. So I really don't think that Rotary is a good example. And Healthier Together, St. Croix Seminar, I don't know if there was alcohol served at that. That would seem to be maybe contrary. There's a Christmas party in November, and that's, so, you know, the question, and, you know, I was at the Youth Action meeting, I know there was no alcohol served there. And so the question is whether or not we feel it's important that we have these licenses and they're utilized to their fullest. If they're, right now, we have 3 extra licenses, so it's not an issue. But if there was someone waiting, a new
Right.
business coming into town,
I
that would be
agree.
that was the reason I believe I wasn't on the council when this was passed.
Yeah, it was that, well, 2 things. The city was bumping up against the quota, and there would be several applicants, and there was also situations where it appeared that the property owner was not utilizing the license and holding it, basically to attract renters of the property.
Does the Hudson Golf Club think they can comply with this
I don't know.
code?
That's a question.
Do you-
Jeff?
Do you
or
think that they
Doug?
can comply with the code during the coming year?
Without disagreeing on the interpretation?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I just would ask maybe the opportunity to comment.
Sure, absolutely.
The notwithstanding the conversation that Kathy had with the fire inspector, who happens also to be the person that reviews the operator's license, the admonition that the Hudson Golf Course got when they bought the facility was, if your front door's open, consider yourself open. You better have a licensed operator on the premises, even if your bar is locked. And so that's what they consider themselves open. They do not advertise in the newspaper. They have a full-time person whose job it is to try to solicit events, and that isn't generally how you advertise. So, you know, every day of the week, somebody could call up and say, hey, could I have a reception there? Could I have a conference room? And they're open for business in that sense. Do they have receipts at Rotary that, you know, if I stopped in the middle of December and said, hey, could I get a drink from the bar? The answer would be no, we're not open to the general public to get a drink. But you want to have a reception, a conference thing, and cocktails? Sure, we're open. You want a table this afternoon? They're open, and they have a full-time person on staff year-round that's their job to solicit those. So, you know, we would take the position that we're open for business 5 days a week, and it's not just the 43 days. In, I'll say, the interpretation that is now being suggested that we need to be open 6 days during the winter, 3 and 2 90-day periods. We were open 43 days for specific events, and apparently that's not enough. If they were 3 days, so we could be open for a 3-day weekend and lock the doors for the rest of the time, that would comply. It doesn't seem to be consistent with the intent to use these, and we use it not in the typical open bar sense. We have a banquet facility that we've spent a lot of money on to change it from a restaurant banquet to a banquet facility. So that's the interpretation that we think is the proper one. Can we be open 3 days? Sure, we could be open 3 days, you know, once in November and once in January, if that's what the city council wants us to do. And we could be closed every other day. You know, it'd be a lot cheaper to not have it open, not have a full-time person on staff sitting there trying to be available. But we certainly could comply with that if that's what the Finance Committee and ultimately the Common Council says 43 days wasn't intermittent, was intermittent, therefore none of those days count.
I don't disagree, Jeff. I just have a question, because you're saying we're open, but then you said the bar's locked.
Well,
Those
we're open.
conflict. I mean, someone's
We're
in the
open.
office
Sure.
who
There
could
is
serve
a
liquor,
licensed operator there whenever the front door is
but the
open.
bar's locked.
The bar's locked because, there's
So
no
it's like
customers
having
there.
a cook on staff, but the kitchen's closed.
The kitchen, they do not do food service.
No, I'm
the
just-
food service is catered in or,
Right.
outsourced. So if you stopped in this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon and said, I'd like to have a conference, use the facilities for a afternoon meeting and we want lunch, could have drinks easy because we have a licensed operator. Having lunch, we would have to contract and make sure that was available.
What's her name, Jeff?
What's that?
Your licensed operator that's there?
It's in the affidavit. It's John Hanson, Doug Hanson, and last year during this period, Janelle
I'll
Gregory.
answer.
Why don't you step up to the microphone if you would, Doug?
I'll answer just a little more what Jeff.
Doug Hanson, General Manager.
Yep.
In regards to the locked bar, there's actually 3 bars on the premise. The basement bar, which is primarily used during the golf season, is in fact during the winter locked. There are 2 other bars that are upstairs, and both of those have like a window shade, very similar to this. Mr. Krupich was quite clear in his definition of what a bar is, and that would include Rotary. We have the upstairs bar that are separated by a window shade. If we have an event, just because someone doesn't ask for a cocktail, and I agree, Mayor Burchell, certainly no one drinks at Rotary. It's not appropriate and it's not the time where someone would have a cocktail. The fact of the matter is the bars available, there's actually 2 bars available upstairs at all times. If someone were to come during Rotary or any of these events, the health events, the school events, the different events we have, the bar is available. A licensed operator is on premise, and in fact during the winter time, even though the downstairs bar is locked, there are 2 bars accessible through nothing more than a window shade or a door that we can't lock in either bar. And what was the other thing we had? Was there another question I was going to answer in regards? Miss Greger? Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Miss Greger has left our employment, gone to UWRF. Her name was Janelle Greger in the affidavit. Our current event coordinator is Christy Nelson. And between Christy, myself, my brother John, we have another couple guys that are banquet setup. We've even had our banquet setup personnel that get the tables and chairs ready become licensed operators or servers of alcohol. Because in the event that they were there and the doors are open, again, Mr. Krupich was quite clear. If the doors are open, you have the availability to serve alcohol. You must have a licensed operator on premise. So we've had our banquet personnel also go out and take the test and receive their operator's permits. In regards to going forward, we want to comply with the city in any way, shape, or form. If that includes to be open an additional 3 days besides the events and the different Christmas parties and things, we'll do it in any way, shape, or form necessary to maintain the license. Up to and including putting an ad in the paper, we're open for 3 additional days. We don't advertise ourselves as a tavern per se. We're not a bar. It's quite different, and it has been different since 1998 when they built the building. It wasn't considered a bar or a hangout by any means, nor will it be in the future. It's a banquet center, a conference center, and a golf course. But we will certainly approach with the Finance Committee or the City Council in any way to comply with the licensing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for me or?
Okay, thank you.
I'd like option 3. I think we need to revisit this question at a later date. Let's go ahead and renew this license, and then let's talk about what we can do to kind of, we need to embrace a catering banquet facility. And we need to have those licenses available if somebody needs that. And I don't know if tying up a license or whether it just needs to be tweaked.
I would agree with you, Randy. I don't mind revisiting the license, code and figuring out what it is. And we certainly have to protect ourselves from a situation where only 24% of the time the business is open, because in this particular case, that's what it was. They were open for 43 days out of 181, which is about 24% of the time. So I don't think the city should be issuing liquor licenses for a business that is only open 24% of the time.
But you're-
However, in this case, they are a unique case because they have the golf season and then they have their banquet season. Mr. Hanson stating that he's willing to comply certainly satisfies me in this particular case because it does what we need to do, and that is protect the right to enforce the code, and it also gets them into compliance. And as far as I'm concerned, that's really what this is about.
So you're satisfied with what you've heard from them?
Yes, if Doug would be willing to send a letter to the city clerk saying, look, we know that we had a past problem, but we're willing to comply with this and we're going to comply with it in the future, I see no reason we shouldn't renew the license. I'm not opposed to that. And it solves what we need to do here.
Is that acceptable to you folks? Jeff and Doug?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to revisit it. I think what I'd like to consider and like council to consider is in a situation like this where it is more of a banquet facility during half of the year, that instead of 3 consecutive days, we just look at 3 days where it's in operation using its liquor license.
Yeah, and that's where I said certainly you can look at that. It should be on the agenda to discuss changes to
Well,
the ordinance
purpose,
if you want to. I know when that was put in, it was just the concern that someone would open for one day and thereby get around the, you can't control everything.
Right.
So you try to set something up that does something to have them open, but yeah, certainly it's worth looking at, and you can do that.
And
Given-
you want the license to contribute to the local economy by either providing jobs or, putting something back into the local community, and that's what the purpose of the license is for. So when we do look at it, we have to consider all of that. And in this particular case, I think we've at least established our right to uphold the codes, which we need to do. And also the business people have said, yeah, we can comply with this. We know what the code is and we're willing to comply. And that's really the key. We get a business in compliance, we've enforced the code. I think we've done what we have to do.
Are you comfortable with option 3 then?
I'm not opposed to looking at it again, sure.
Then I would move to recommend to council we adopt option 3.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion on that?
And maybe contingent upon a letter of compliance with.
And as long as
Well,
the business owner is willing to send a letter to the city clerk saying, yeah.
And that's fine, but right now, they don't know what they're agreeing to comply to.
They're
because we're
agreeing
going
to
to
comply
revisit
with
it
the current code.
ordinance,
The
what's on the
current code.
books, yeah.
Until we.
until we change it.
If
we change
it
it.
gets changed. I mean, that's all we have right now is our current code.
And I would just
That's
add,
all we can enforce
So
is the
it's
current
a
code.
Yes, sir.
I do have a question in terms of Lori's comment. Do we have to actually sell liquor 3 consecutive days? Are we not open for business as we've been? That's the issue for us. We actually believed that we were in compliance based on advice, right or wrong, advice from the city official who checks our licenses on premises. So we felt we were in compliance. If
I don't
now
believe
the-
you were, Jeff.
That's fine.
Yep.
That's fine. But if now we have direction that, no, you need to have 3 consecutive days where you actually have an event and apparently advertise and sell liquor.
I don't
we
think
can
you
do
have to
that.
advertise, you just have to be open, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
well,
the question for us.
Yep.
Yeah, how are you going to show that you're open? And I think advertising is one way, or having a 3 consecutive day type event.
We can have a big neon sign in the front that says open.
Open, yep.
Yeah,
That
that's,
does it.
And we'll take a picture and we'll send it to each one of you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
but we are going to revisit it.
We are going to revisit it,
yeah,
but
that's up to, yeah.
that's up to council or this committee.
But they can only say right now that they're going to comply with what is on the books right now.
3 consecutive days every 90 days.
Or just be in compliance with the code. We intend to be in compliance with the code.
We'll just have to.
Well, it's 3 days. We're not going to go over that argument again.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
And you have to be open for the purpose of
Okay,
selling.
do it your way and that's fine. As long as we all have the same intention.
Okay? Do you want to read back what we got?
Randy's motion that I have was option 3, contingent on getting a letter of intent to comply with the city code.
Okay, and Rich seconded it.
I'll second it.
Yeah. think you seconded it. I'm sorry.
I think-
Lori did, excuse me, Lori did.
Okay.
Sorry. Any other discussion?
Can we have a separate motion then to bring this back?
Sure,
for-
let's
yeah,
finish
let's
this
not-
one first. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Isn't the motion.
Motion carries.
That is part of option 3. Discuss.
I didn't
Well,
hear
it's
it.
nice
Let's
to
make
have
it
a
separate.
clean-
We've
yeah,
been doing a
right.
lot of multifaceted
Okay, so go ahead,
motions.
Lori.
So I'd like to make a motion that we bring the issue back to finance and full council, just regarding the specific requirements for retaining a liquor license.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Well, I guess, just to sort of look ahead, I'd like us to consider the fact that, given the nature of their business, there's no guarantee they're going to have multiple events on a weekend. Any one of these events could have asked for liquor to be served, is my understanding. Whether or not they choose to, you know what I
Well, if
mean?
there's a high school event in there, I don't
Well,
think they could.
No, my point is, they book any number of events, whether or not that specific group chooses to have the bar open and to have a server, that's their choice.
Right.
But it's available from the business.
Well, you don't need a liquor license if they're not going to serve alcohol. I mean, you can have all these events without alcohol, then you can have the events without alcohol.
You can, but my point is, they are a business that makes it available. If someone wants to have a Christmas party and have liquor served,
Yep.
we need to recognize that as,
Correct.
okay, whether that company chooses to do it or not is their choice, but it could be construed as a potential. So I would like that to count as a,
Although the intent of the license is to sell alcohol.
Yes.
That's the reason you give them a license. Otherwise, you
but
don't
I can
need
go to a
license.
bar and order
Otherwise, you don't need a
lemonade.
license.
Okay, yeah,
This
It's up to the
discussion
choice.
should occur in, when
Right.
the
That's
council
fine.
considers the ordinance.
We have a motion now on the floor to consider the changing of our liquor license.
Bring back.
That 145-12.
Yep.
F.
Okay, all those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda is consider room tax allocation for senior center. Randy?
Yeah, I brought this up, and I was requesting that we take a look at it for room tax allocation. The costs for the seniors have considerably gone up, and I know that Mr. Mayor and a council person, Bernard, you'd have had conversations with the folks, I think, in particular to that. And all I'm asking is maybe for a $500 increase to their funding that would offset the rent that they are charged by the Wintergreen facility, freeing up those monies. And I know I do have a couple people here that would, if you wanted to talk to it.
So the amount that we have left, that's sort of
We had a carryover
unallocated.
balance of, I think it was about 23,000. And this year, we had a carryover balance of about 23, and then this year, based upon our projected revenues versus expenditures, we still are $3,000 excess revenues.
3, okay,
Allocated.
Yes,
Okay.
unallocated.
okay.
Because just to, I know we probably know what they do. They do these Meals on Wheels. They do a lot of things out there for the seniors that can't get around, and they take care of the things that somehow people don't. Jerry, I don't know if you wanted to mention anything, or you just want to sit there, or no? Well,
I'm in a grading class on what you're trying to infer.
so
Finding it about as difficult as when the nuns were trying to teach me Latin.
So I'm just simply trying to offset that cost so they have a little more in their coffers.
Is that a motion, Randy?
Yes, it is.
I will second that motion.
Any other discussion?
Out of this year's unallocated.
Yes,
Is there a number?
500.
I think in the future, there should be a request form or a grant form that's filled out.
Yes,
Yep.
Or make a request at the time you're talking about the budget.
right.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
They already are in there, correct, Neil?
yes.
Yep.
One of our, okay.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Make a recommendation to council. We have an application for amusement device license from William Lethert. Application, questions or approval. I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 7, that's been postponed till the next meeting. Item 8, consider St. Croix Paramedic EMS Commission recommendation to add a 4th full-time paramedic. You have an issue sheet in front of you. Chief Eby is here, I believe. And Lori, you're the rep for the St. Croix EMS, and Chief is here to answer any questions you have.
Can I just lay a little
Sure.
background? This has been something that the EMS Commission's been discussing since Eric Christensen was here, and so it's not anything new. It's something we've tried to put off for as long as we could, and we've just reached a point with the call volume that it's been really difficult to fill all the shifts with just 3 full-time paramedics on staff. Neil and Kim worked really hard to crunch some numbers. One thing that we've been missing out on are a lot of transfers from Hudson Hospital into the cities, and it's a significant amount of revenue that we're missing with those transfers. And we believe that with even capturing about 60% of them, that we would come close to covering the cost of this position. So, for example, last year we lost about 120 transfers. Average revenue is like $740 per transfer. So we're talking a significant amount of revenue that would, if that 4th person were on staff, we could capture some of those transfers. It would largely cover the cost. Right now, Kim's been working a fair number of weekends. I don't think it's a very sustainable situation to have our full-time or EMS chief working during the week and then filling shifts on the weekends. That's not going to work for long. And just like our police and fire are key, public safety is one of the key things we provide to our residents. They expect outstanding service from our EMS, and this is an area that I think we're at a point where call volume really is going to require that we add this 4th position. So Kim, anything you'd like to add?
No, you pretty much covered it. I just, like she said, with the transfers that we've given away, and 120 was just even a low number. We don't have the exact number that we lost from the floor, but from the ER alone, we lost almost 100 calls last year. So we're losing a lot, and it's a good relationship with the city. As far as the residents, they get the citizen rate. If we have to call in another service to take a transfer, our citizens are getting paid a non-citizen rate from that other service.
They're getting charged.
And they're getting charged a higher rate just to be taken over by another service. Obviously, that's one of the bigger things, is that we can do that. The other thing is with that second, with having another medic in town, we can do the advanced procedures that we have to do. Per the state of Wisconsin, in order to do some of our advanced procedures on scene, we have to have 2 medics. If we only have 1 on and that's it, if it's me or one other person, we can't do those. And we have to go to the nearest facility, and then we still can't transfer that patient on to where they need to go. With the 4th full-time medic, we can offset the stuff that we're missing, the shifts that we're missing, and put in those casuals and the other shifts that we need to make sure that we can cover the city and still be able to do what we can do for the citizens and get them over to the cities if that's what needs to happen, or just handle those big calls that we can't handle now.
Is their budget, will it fit in their budget? And the second question I have, I do support it. The second question is, isn't it a couple of years ago that we got ourselves in trouble for doing all these transfers that nobody paid on? And then the budget was...
I think the 739 is higher than I thought it was from the last time we looked at it. So at 730, maybe this... Can we break even and cover our costs at 739?
Right, and there are 2 questions that I think I heard. Number 1, is it in their budget? No, right now it is not in their budget. Okay. The second question is with regard to the money. The actual billings here are probably in the range averaging about $1,200 per. And what the EMS billing service did is they looked at the past 2 years of billings and broke down, because some of those for the the self-pays, they had write-offs For the Medicare, Medicaid, they had adjustments. So the 739 was the average actual net that the service got per transfer.
Okay, because a few years back, we were
Right.
told that that was depleting our budget. We weren't making any money, we
We were
money.
losing money.
Right. So if you look at here, and this is kind of on an average over the past 2 years, the cash that went into the bank per transfer averaged $739.
Okay. So what's a transport of a Medicare patient? Is it 2.25, 275? Do you know?
The base charge that we
If
charge?
no, that we get paid from Medicare. If we take or Medicaid, if we take somebody from Hudson to Regions, and
That's
it's
probably a reasonable estimate.
about 2.25, 250.
Yep, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And so it's going to be your private pay.
Private pay.
That's
Right.
going to make up for,
Well, it's
I
probably
mean, that's
gonna be
what
private
brings
pay and
in.
insurance.
Yep.
If you look at the breakdown, Medicare, Medicaid, we're going to get anywhere 20 to 30% on the dollar that's billed.
Yep.
Private pay is where we get our write-offs, and we're probably in the 50 to 60 cents on a dollar that we get. With insurance companies, we're closer to 90 cents on a dollar. And that's why we looked at the 2-year blended average.
And I think that's a bigger number than I thought we were looking at a couple years ago when we were looking at those numbers, because the question that we always asked was, why do we even make these if we're losing
Yep.
$600 a transfer? Why would we even think about it?
And I honestly don't even know where that came from. I couldn't even begin to tell you. I just know what I know now,
Yes.
and I know that this is what we get.
Well, this is
on
good
it.
information. This is different information than we received before.
Yep.
I know people who have paid $1,400 for a transfer from the Hudson Hospital emergency room to Regions Hospital.
Yep.
They've paid $1,400 and over $1,400 for
Yep.
And it depends on the level of service that's needed, during that transfer. But I feel confident that we've got a good handle on what we're missing in potential revenue. Yeah, we may need to do some squeezing in other parts of the budget, but right now, it's breaking our service not having that fourth person.
Is that a motion?
It is.
I'll second.
Okay. Randy, any discussion? No. Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consider recommendation regarding minimum wage hours for health insurance coverage. Mr. Welly.
Currently, our plan, we only require 24 hours or 60% full-time equivalent for an individual to be on our health insurance. It's a prorated, we pay 60, they pay 40. This was done as it was somewhat written into the contracts that we were under at the time we went on this insurance. In discussions with our health insurance consultant, the 30 hours per week is going to kind of be the minimum standard under the new Affordable Care Act, and she recommended that at some point we consider that, making that 30-hour a week, our threshold. And at this point, preferred one says we can do it anytime we want. Deb said Swaholic said we should wait till the end of the year, but make the switch over. At this point, we have no employees that it would impact, so we wouldn't be kicking anybody off the insurance. So if there's no objection, I just thought now would be the time to make the change, and that 30 hours then would be our minimum.
Anybody have any questions on that?
No, I'll make a motion to approve our new minimum be 30 hours per week in order to qualify for health insurance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll work with preferred one and Deb to figure out exactly when we can implement it, but for sure the first of the year.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consider room tax request of Hudson Grocery Cooperative to receive a grant form. Oh, did I skip something? Oh, I'm sorry, Devin. Consider amending city code regarding unpaid utilities on tax roll ordinance 2-13. Devin. Neil. I'll get it.
In the city code right now, the sewer portion of the code references certain dates for adding delinquent utility bills to the tax code. The dates that we have in there are not compliant with state codes, so the proposed change would strike out the portion that does not comply with state code, and language would be added saying that unpaid utility bills will be transferred to the tax roll pursuant to Wisconsin statutes.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
What exactly does that do for us in that case? I mean, just
We're in state
briefly.
law compliance in.
Yeah, state law has a prescribed procedure for doing it where you have to do things on certain dates.
Yep.
And we were close, but we're not quite there. And probably the greatest impact is it gives the people actually probably another 3 weeks to pay before it gets tax rolled, under the state statute.
Okay.
So
Other
I'll
questions?
Make a motion to approve that change.
Is there a second? I'll second. Any discussion? Any other discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 11, consider request of Hudson Grocery Cooperative to receive a grant from room tax dollars. I believe there's someone here. If you could state your name and address and
Yes, my name is Bess Hambleton. I'm the current board secretary for the Hudson Grocery Cooperative. I live right over on 4th Street at 522 4th Street. I do have a PowerPoint presentation if you have a hookup for that, but otherwise I can proceed without that. That's certainly just fine.
I don't think we need it.
Okay.
We can walk through it. That'd be great.
All right. Well, thank you for having us here this evening and hearing our request. As is on the agenda, we're requesting a grant from the Hudson Room Tax Fund. Now, for anyone not familiar with grocery cooperatives, a grocery co-op is basically a grocery store like any other. The main difference is that it's a community-owned business. So a community-owned business being locally controlled, the business model is driven by the needs of the community, and this is really something that arose as a community initiative based on what we're seeing as some unmet needs right now in the grocery market in Hudson. And of course, downtown Hudson has lacked a grocery store since the closure of Econo Foods a number of years ago. Now, in our exploratory phase at the Hudson Grocery Co-op, we did an initial survey which garnered about 250 responses and indicated that a surprising number of people are driving elsewhere to purchase their groceries. People from Hudson are going to Stillwater and Woodbury and the Twin Cities. And 90% of our survey respondents said that they would shop at a downtown grocery store either very often or fairly often. This was true even though a majority of respondents actually don't live within walking distance of downtown. So we really see this as kind of an unmet need. Now, the mission of the Hudson Grocery Cooperative is to be a community-owned, full-service grocery store that offers diverse food and product choices, including organic, sustainable, and regionally sourced options in the St. Croix Valley for residents, visitors, and commuters. So we serve as a local resource, providing practical health and food-related information, supporting responsible economic development, and working to build community through food. Now, a grocery co-op would have significant benefits for Hudson's economy. The co-op would recapture those food dollars that are now being spent elsewhere by keeping shoppers here in Hudson. And studies have shown that community-owned grocers are a driver of economic activity. So for every $1,000 that's spent at a local food co-op, about $1,600 in economic activity is generated in the local economy. Well, how does that happen? For one thing, having a grocery co-op creates jobs. It's an employer. So the average co-op creates 10 jobs for every $1 million in sales revenue. For example, River Market in Stillwater, they have about 36 full and part-time employees. Menominee Market, which is another regional comparable, is about half that size. They have about 20 employees. Now, additionally, a co-op would, of course, draw new shoppers downtown, so both current Hudson residents who've been driving elsewhere for groceries, but also bringing in people from surrounding communities. We already have owners in Hammond, Woodville, River Falls, Bayport, Stillwater, Prescott, even in St. Paul, so from around the area. Additionally, the grocery cooperative would be supporting local farms and businesses. It's a part of the co-op's mission to be offering locally sourced products, so from soap to honey to steak sauce, produce, other goods. And to give an idea of what that might look like number-wise, River Market last year purchased, so at cost, approximately $1 million in goods from local producers. So a pretty significant chunk of change. Then another impact that the co-op would have is as a host or sponsor of future events. So some examples of events held by other grocery co-ops include community fairs, regional bike and walking tours, offering cooking classes and other classes, hosting a winter's farmers market. And then overall, having a co-op in downtown Hudson would enhance the quality of life in the community, which might sound like kind of a tall order, but we've all seen the effect that vacant storefronts have in a business community, and the importance of having magnet businesses and community amenities. So this is what the Hudson Grocery Cooperative is going to be. Now, where are we at in our development? Well, last month we celebrated the first anniversary of filing the Articles of Incorporation. Let's see, over the last year we received a scholarship grant towards training and development of the board. We had our first annual owners meeting. We're adding new owners every day. So we're now approaching the 200 member mark, and that's our benchmark for holding a market study. And that'll put us into position so that at this time next year, we're looking to be hiring a general manager so that in the following year, the store can be ready to open its doors. So a market study is really an essential step in this process to ensure the long-term viability and success of this business. This is going to be used to determine the optimal size and location of the store and formulate both the short-term and long-term business strategy. So the study would include a location and site analysis, a full market assessment and analysis of consumer and demographic statistics, study of traffic patterns in relation to potential sites, so really looking closely at potential sites, and synergy with other nearby businesses, so that that feeds into the sales forecasting for both the launch and then projection of future sales over the next several years. And this is really, again, going to be essential in being able to determine the scope and the size of the store so that we start off on the right foot when we open our doors. Now, the consultant that we intend to hire, we've researched several options, is from CDS Consulting Co-op. Her name is Debbie Swasana, and her experience includes 20 years in the field doing location research, site analysis. She's worked significantly with co-ops, but also with other types of retailers, so big box stores, chain stores, specialty stores. But her work with co-ops is really what sets her apart and why we're interested in her. And I did distribute, for your reference, a sheet of testimonials if you're interested in taking a look. She's completed dozens of market studies for now successful co-ops throughout the region and throughout the country. And so we respectfully request a grant from the Hudson Room Tax Fund to aid in the financing of this market study so that we can take the next step towards development of this community amenity.
Thank you. Questions?
No questions, just a couple comments. It sounds like what you guys are doing is very interesting and has great potential. We don't have any tax dollars, room tax dollars allocated this year for grants, correct?
No.
We would have to make an allocation. Mm-hmm. We've decided to keep the grant program in place, but the committee hasn't met. We're not the committee.
Right.
So
The discussion, I believe, was at the time you got a grant application, you would determine, would you
Okay.
reactivate, but have the committee determine it, or
Okay,
would you?
but we have no funding allocated
Correct.
at this point.
For this year, correct.
And can I be honest? It's a very large amount of money that you guys are asking for relative to other things that we fund. In the last couple of years, we've funded $2,000 to $3,000, and those went to to 2 or 3 different groups. So personally, I wouldn't support this large amount going to this group, really, or any group, especially given that we haven't allocated any funds for it. We're trying to do some other things with room tax dollars at this time. You heard us approve $500 more for the senior center. We don't have, I don't see where that would be coming from, and so I would not support it at this time.
Okay. Anyone else?
I may be a little bit out of this. Is this a for-profit cooperative?
It is a for-profit business, but it's organized as a cooperative. So,
But it is a for-profit
but it
business.
is a for-profit entity. It's just that
With owners.
With owners, yeah. So, similar to the shareholders of a corporation, they're shareholders in the cooperative, but it's open to the community, and then profits are, of course, reinvested for the benefit of the cooperative. So,
I have a problem with putting tax dollars into a for-profit business. I guess that would be one of my big reservations about this. When it becomes a for-profit business, it goes into the competitive market and then competes with the other local businesses that already exist. And I don't think it's the place of government to support for-profit businesses. At least that's my opinion.
I would agree.
Well, I'd agree with both of you, and I'm finding it real hard to find out what kind of tourism that would bring in. I get the whole people come in and visit the store, but I don't think room tax dollars was meant for something like this, in my opinion.
Well, I'll disagree with all of you, because I might as well. I think what it does is it establishes another business downtown, and I think there's roughly 200 members, or will be 200 members from what I was told. And what it'll do for the downtown area, again, it's dollars that are kept in the local economy, and instead of going to Stillwater or Woodbury, and the local farmers would benefit $1 million worth of sales to those folks who then again will come back and spend the money hopefully in our community, whether they buy vehicles or fertilizer or things that they need for their farm. So I think what it does is it's a market study to see whether or not it's even feasible, is from my understanding of what this was. Not necessarily that we're funding their operation, but whether or not it's a feasibility study to whether it even makes sense here or not. Because it may not. I would hope it would, because I think it would be a positive impact on our community. So.
Well, I would hope some of the people who go to Stillwater and Woodbury to shop would consider going up on the hill. We've got 3
Sure.
very good grocery stores.
Yep.
Or there's a co-op in River Falls. They don't have to cross the river. So,
All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay, is there anyone that would like to deny the,
Well, I'll move to deny, but I make it very clear that I do support the effort, but I don't think this is the revenue source for that particular venture.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussions? We'll make this, all in favor?
Aye.
okay.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries to deny. We'll make that recommendation to City Council.
thank you.
Thank you. Any items for future agendas?
Neil, did you want to?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are now at the point that all of the committees have looked at potential projects for the 5-year capital plan, and Sean Lentz from Ellers is prepared to come back for another presentation to us. And the question is one of timing. He is available next Wednesday. I know it's a little bit short notice. The other option may be the following Monday. I'd have to verify with him in terms of whether he's available that day to maybe start this meeting a little bit earlier. So if we can have some guidelines, I can try to work that out with him.
Wednesday works.
Wednesday works? The 12th?
When I'm available 12th.
Okay.
What time?
Evening.
Would we like a full council, Neil, or are we going to go just finance?
We could do it one of 2 ways. We could have finance, have a work session on it and take it to council the following Monday, or we could have the whole council here.
What's your
It's either way.
prerogative? Any thoughts?
I'd go for full council.
I would too. Let's see what
We can ask them at-
we'll ask them at the council meeting. Okay,
Move to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. We'll be starting in 35 seconds.